Hello and welcome to the Planets in Love, and I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
So this is a really big week, isn't it, Armand? I mean, we kind of had a little bit of a quietish week. I mean, at least just a little bit of a break from the intensity last week. And here we are, right, whoosh into it again this week. And we start with, Monday we've got the moon in Scorpio. And that's really the lead up to the big thing this week, which is the full moon in Scorpio, as well as the nodes changing signs. So on their own, they're two quite big things to happen. But both of them at the same time give a huge sense of kind of really intensity, and particularly in relationships, because whenever we've got a full moon in Scorpio, we're really kind of in the unconscious, in the emotions, in the underworld. So quite intense this week.
Yeah, I mean, technically we begin with the moon in Libra, but making really hard aspects. So it's kind of like trying to keep balance, and then sort of that's difficult to do. And then Scorpio moons, they're a little bit intense to begin with. And then the Scorpio full moon, I mean, this is when things, emotional stuff that we've been otherwise trying to keep down or like let out at little bits just comes erupting to the surface. And often I think the problem with the Scorpio full moon each year is that we not only deal with issues that are, on our plate now and react emotionally, but we bring up all kinds of things. So, the abandonment issues from when your friends didn't call you to go out and play in third grade come up again, we tend to throw all of these things out there. So it tends to be this big emotional eruption. And it's a very, very difficult full moon. So, I mean, just to be aware of that, and in a sense, it's a cleansing though, too. In a sense, I mean, it really is that sort of purging thing. Sometimes when you're a little nauseous, you do feel better after you throw up, and that's the upside of this coming week.
We always have to see the upside, don't we? Absolutely important. But, reminding, of course, that, just a reminder that full moons, of course, we've got the sun opposite the moon. So we've got this real kind of need to integrate and, the sun and the moon. And in this case, it's particularly important because we have the sun in Taurus, which really, is much more kind of in the mundane world. It's very earthy, it's very grounded. And then we have Scorpio that pulls us into the underworld. So our emotions literally pull us down. So we need that balance of Taurus to maybe keep us a little grounded and to try and integrate those. So maybe to spend some time outdoors, just to spend some time in nature to ground, and also to remember that some of the key themes of a full moon in Scorpio also include passion, regeneration, transformation. It's also quite a sexual full moon. So to also remember there are also those sides to it. And to remember the rulers, of course, are Pluto and Mars. Now, the interesting thing is that this full moon is actually in sextile to Pluto. So it kind of really adds that transformative emphasis to it. So it's really very much about regenerating. So it might be quite a useful time for couples to think about, what's going on in terms of power dynamics in the relationship. What are the real power dynamics, not the kind of superficial ones, but the real ones under the surface. And also to think what kind of structures need to be regenerated in the relationship. What's got a little bit kind of moldy and old and, needs to be transformed. And as you said, needs to just come to the surface and, be thrown out, basically.
Yeah, it is an opportunity for it. It is very passionate, potentially passionate, and so sometimes some of those emotions could be put in, to better use than to have conflicts and so on. I think the grounding, the earthiness of Taurus is important. Another thing that can come up though with the Taurus-Scorpio axis is financial matters, and I think couples that find themselves kind of having a little bit of a dish about finances might actually have an emotional or security type of issue underneath that is being projected onto finances. Or alternatively, sometimes finances are a way that you kind of work out your emotional things. It's like, a lot of people will go buy something when they're a little upset if that's a strategy you've been using too much, this might be a time when you become aware of it.
Also, to keep in mind that with the full moon, and we'll talk about the nodes in a minute, but with the full moon, the Mars in Gemini is also squaring Neptune in Pisces. So here we have two planets, and Mars, of course, one of the rulers of Scorpio, so it's very important in terms of this full moon. But we have two planets in dual signs, so there could be a little bit of confusion. However, it might be a really nice time to just focus on love. Literally think about, what does love mean in the relationship? What's that about? Because then we're using that Neptune in Pisces, you know, for a good purpose, and the Mars in Gemini.
I agree. I agree. It could be a kind of fantasy, playful type of thing. But yeah, it's all, that's the other side of those dual signs can be a little bit of, taking up things and running with them. And, Mars and Neptune, that can be a little bit of tilting at windmills. And sometimes, in the signs involved, maybe making up fantasies that are, either playful and fun, but also kind of a little bit of a delusion that can, go in a lot of different directions in terms of, jealousies or infatuations and so on. So a little careful about, experience it all, but don't take it quite so seriously.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned jealousy, because I was just thinking about that with the full moon as well, that may come to the surface, and, to be a little bit cautious, because even though Mercury's gone direct, it's still in shadow. So there could be misunderstandings, and there may not be any reason for the jealousy, or there may also be betrayals that come to light, but hopefully not. Hopefully it's just, jealousies that are coming out from underneath, maybe from older prior relationships or prior experiences. So the nodes, what do you think about this shift, Armand, into, and I'm talking about the true node rather than the mean node, which happens the same time as the full moon, where we're going, we're shifting from Virgo Pisces axis, which was about being of service and not sacrificing ourselves, into this Leo Aquarius axis.
Well, one thing, it's going to be hard to pull it apart from the full moon, but one thing, when we have a planet or a point changing signs, usually the very first day that it goes in, we get some kind of an event in the collective that tells us about what's going on. It sort of sets the theme. And I think over the course of this week, we'll probably see something that shows us, first of all, what we've learned with the node on the Virgo Pisces axis, and then what we're going to be dealing with on the Leo Aquarius axis. I think that this, in terms of politics, is going to be, really significant. In terms of our personal life, I think that it's going to put in a little bit more of a question about the Leonine following your heart versus the more Aquarian, what is expected of you, what are the obligations. It's heart-centered rather than sometimes head-centered. It's a subtle shift, though. It's a subtle shift, and I wouldn't expect a big bump on that day for any of us personally, but I think that it is something that we'll be dealing with over the course of the next 18 months.
I agree with you. I think it's lovely, that shift into the heart. I think that's a great way of seeing it. And I think that's a really important shift and will help in relationships. I think one of the things, though, also is to remember that Leo, of course, is very much an individual sign. So, versus Aquarius, the group. So there may be in relationships also that issue of self versus the group, self versus the family, self versus the collective. And that may come up in relationships and how to find that compromise. Certainly a need, I think, for us as individuals to own our own power, and certainly in our relationships, because of course it's hard to have a full and complete relationship in terms of intimacy unless we are really grounded in ourselves as individuals. So we may be kind of pushed and nudged to do that a little bit more. Also, the interesting thing is that, of course, the generation who are kind of in their, mid to late 40s are now have natally got the Aquarius Leo node. The South node is in Leo and the North node in Aquarius. So they're having, that's really going to affect them over the next few years. And also there's a few generations who have that. And I always think, I think for generations born with Leo North node, it's easier in a way than for generations who are born with Leo South node, because they're kind of going from a position where they've had that empowerment to maybe having to give some of that up for the collective. So that may be a little bit challenging. So if you have that nodal aspect, or if you're in a relationship with somebody with that, just be aware that those issues are going to come up over the next while or so.
And having gone through all of that throughout the week, I think when we get to Friday, we're going to have a nice night to go out and enjoy the Sagittarius moon. It's still pretty full. It looks to me like the weekend will be a pretty nice time. Certainly, I think Friday night looks like the weekend night that'll be the most fun. We have Mars and Jupiter. You might even kill some out of Thursday for that matter. But it might be time to lighten up a little bit and get out there and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, especially before the moon goes into Capricorn, then on the Sunday, which again might be a little more insular, a little more quiet. So yes, take the fun when you can have it, but also, go with the energies, explore passion, explore all of that with the full moon. And we will, of course, be back the following week to see what's in store for us all.
Join us then.
Take care, Aman. Bye-bye.